Hey everyone, today we're going to talk a little bit about how to add doodles to your lettering. And it's fairly simple and there's many different ways to do it. But I'm going to talk through some of my most frequently used methods. So for this first word, we're doing the word love. The easiest way to choose what kind of illustration to include in your lettering is to let the word guide you. So for example, love, you think about hearts, roses. So I added a heart in place of O. It's probably one of the easiest ways to go about adding illustrations to your lettering. Similarly, for coffee, I'm just going to add a coffee bean in place of O. You're going to find that the letter O is very easy to replace with fairly simple doodles. So that's something to keep in mind. So yeah, this is one of the easiest ways to add an illustration into your lettering. Just replace a letter with a simple drawing. So now I'm going to show you how to do the word plant. And using this word for each letter, I'm going to show you a different way of incorporating doodles into that letter. So let me write out the word plants first in block letters. And when you're doing like illustration based letters, you want to make them somewhat chubby because then you have more space to fill in. If it's too thin, then it's going to be a little bit harder. Although I am going to show you one way to do a thin letter. So there's my word plants. For P, I'm going to make petals, or you can do leaves or flowers, whatever suits your fancy, but for me I'm going to do petals, just going up the letter P. First I'm just filling in the shape, and then we'll add in details later. So very quickly with your pencil, just go ahead and fill in the shape of petals, building upwards. You can also build downwards, whatever you're more comfortable with. For the letter L, I'm just going to fill it with leaves. And then I'm going to add little circles and dots in order to fill that space, the empty space. You still want to make it look like the letter L after you erase the outline. So the best way to do that is to add some circles or dots to in spaces that are empty. The third one, for the letter A, I'm going to do flowers. And I'm just going to build it just like the letter P. I'm going to build it with flowers instead. And then you just want to make sure that you're within the outline, so when you erase your pencil marks afterwards, it will still be in the shape of the letter A. So it's not the easiest to see because I'm so zoomed out, but these are all flowers. Very simple 5-petal circular flowers. Okay, so instead of doing a bubble letter for this N, I'm going to make a thin monoline N first, and then we're just going to draw flowers along the line. So just a single row of flowers instead of, filling in a bubble letter with flowers. This is an alternative way you can go about using doodles in place of letters. Instead of flowers, you can also do leaves or whatever plants that you enjoy in your life. And another way is to just make a letter completely out of the doodle. So in this case, I'm going to use leaves in place of letter T, so just two leaves, one horizontal, one vertical. These designs are best for letters that don't have curves in them, so like T, A would be good too. Probably O would be very difficult, so just something to keep in mind when you're trying to choose what kind of doodle. And then for the letter S, I'm just going to not fill it in, but I'm just going to draw some flowers inside the letter S. In this case, we're still going to outline the whole letter S, and then we're probably just going to color in the blank space with a marker, with a color. Alright, well, we're still on the subject of plants and flowers. I'm just going to show you how to draw a few simple flowers. The easiest way to make sure that your petals are more or less the same length is to draw a circle and then just fill it in with the petals. And I normally do like the compass, so north, south, east, west, petals first and then build around it. So you don't have to make it exactly the same distance apart, but this way of doing it, like breaking it into quarters and then eighths and then filling in the rest, is probably the easiest way to make a somewhat symmetrical flower. And then petals, you can do really thin ones, you can do thick, fat ones, short ones, wide ones, and These aren't like realistic flowers. I'm not basing these off of any real flowers. They're just ways, little flower doodles that are simple to create and add into your lettering. So you can do little circles inside for the center point, or you can just do like a crosshatch like I did in the middle flower. All right, and then one last flower, I'm just gonna do fat petals that aren't precise. And then we're gonna add some, make it look like it is curling. And the way to do that is to just draw some lines following the outline inside your petal. And then one last way to fill in the middle is to just do squiggly lines. They don't have to be perfect circles. All right, so we've sketched out our letters and our words and our doodle, so now we're just going to ink it. Okay, so for the letter S, not only did we add the flowers inside, but I'm also going to add some dots around in the empty space just to fill it up a little bit more. Otherwise there's too much blank space, personally, I think. So I like to just put some dots in there to make it a little bit more filled. Having inked it, now we can erase our pencil marks, and as you can see, after I erase the plant's outline, you can still more or less make out the shape of the letters, and that's the most important part of making doodles into letters. Okay, so now we can add some details into our doodles, and this is what makes it come to life, I think. We don't have to add too much, but you do want to give it some dimensions and some shadows to make it feel more 3D. So for the petals, we can just do little dashes from the bottom up, because that's how we want our petals to grow. It's going upwards. For the leaves, we can just do some leaf lines that we always do. For flowers, I generally just do little detailed lines that radiate from the center of the flower. It gives it that 3D look. Since these flowers and these leaves and the word plants are so tiny, you don't have to do too much, because if you do too much details, then it gets a little bit too dark, and we want to avoid that. So just one line here and there is more than enough. Alright, so for these bigger flowers, we can add a little bit more detail because we have more space. So again, I'm just doing little dashes from the center of the flower on the petals to the outside, and then you just use these lines to guide the viewer's eyes. So if you think that these flowers are curved in a way, then you want to, or these petals are curved, then you'll want your lines to curve in the way that you think the flower is curving. And again, as you can see, I'm curving these lines because I want it to feel like it's a 3D rounded middle part of the flower, not just flat. And again, you don't have to do these detailing work. You can just color it in as it is, and that is also good enough. Similarly, with this flower, I want it to feel like it's more curled into the center, and that's why my lines are a little bit more curved than straight as it has been. Now that we've inked everything and added the details, we can start coloring in. Fairly simple. It's just like, you know, however you color in, and it doesn't have to be super exact and super clean. You can color outside the lines, that's okay. And then it's just time to add a little bit of shadow if you want. Again, you don't have to. This is just to give it more dimension, especially for these petal focus ones, like in this letter P. You want it to feel like the petals are overlapping each other, and the best way to demonstrate that is with shadows. So where the shadow should be, where the petals are overlapping, that's where your shadows are going to be. But also, depending on where your light source is, it might be on the bottom left-hand corner, upper right-hand corner, whichever is easiest for you. But for me, my light source is generally on the upper right-hand corner, so there's going to be a shadow falling to the bottom left of each letter or each doodle. Also, I like to, at the very end, using my fine liner, go over some of the black parts of the word again, or of the doodle, especially where the shadows fall, so it's slightly darker, and this gives it more contrast. And it feels a little bit more three-dimensional. Okay, so that's a very quick tutorial on how to incorporate some doodles into your letters. You don't want to do too many of these in one composition because then it gets a little bit crazy and it's hard to read. But otherwise, one or two elements makes it a lot more fun. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's session, and thank you so much for watching.